They fired me to steal my system, and they thought I would just walk away quietly. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Logan Mercer. I worked for a mid-sized logistics company in Ohio for 6 years. I wasn't the loudest person in the office. I didn't chase attention. I just worked. Over time, I built something that changed everything for that company. It was an internal tracking and automation system that saved them thousands of hours and cut down major errors. I built it from scratch. Late nights, weekends, missed family dinners, all because I believed loyalty mattered. At first, my boss, Derek Holloway, praised me. He called me the backbone of the department. He shook my hand in meetings and told executives that I was a genius. Slowly, things changed. He started asking for full documentation of my system. Then he brought Tanya Wells in too. Private meetings about future expansion. Tanya wasn't technical. She was ambitious and knew how to flatter people in power. One morning, Derek called me into his office. His voice was calm to calm. He said the company was restructuring. He said my position was no longer necessary. I remember staring at him, waiting for the joke. There wasn't one. Tanya was sitting in the corner, pretending to look sympathetic. I felt my chest tighten. 6 years, just like that. I asked about my system. Derek smiled and said, "Don't worry, we'll manage." That's when it hit me. They didn't need me anymore because they thought they had everything they needed. My work, my code, my process. They believed once they had access, I was disposable. I packed my desk in silence. No dramatic exit, no shouting, just quiet humiliation. Some coworkers avoided eye contact. A few looked confused. I walked out carrying a small box, but inside I was carrying something much heavier. That night I sat at my kitchen table replaying every moment from the past few months. The extra questions, the forced documentation. Tanya suddenly acting interested in technical details she'd never cared about before. It wasn't random, it was planned. They didn't fire me because I failed. They fired me because I succeeded. And they thought they could take what I built and erase me from the story. They were wrong. After that shocking day, I spent the next few hours just thinking. I went over every detail in my mind, trying to understand how Derek and Tanya had planned. It became clear they didn't just want me gone. They wanted my system, my hard work, and they wanted to make it seem like it was all theirs. That betrayal burned hotter than anything I had felt before. I knew I couldn't react impulsively. Getting angry, yelling, or trying to confront them immediately would only make me look weak. I needed a plan. I needed to take control of the situation, even from the outside. That's when I realized that my revenge wouldn't be loud or messy. It would be quiet, clever, and completely unavoidable. I started paying attention to everything Derek and Tanya did after I left. I learned how they planned to run the system, without me. I noticed the small things they overlooked, the quirks, the shortcuts, the undocumented sections of my work. It was almost like watching someone try to drive a car blindfolded. They thought they knew it all, but they had no idea how fragile their control was. At the same time, I started preparing myself mentally. I reminded myself that this wasn't just about my system. It was about proving that betrayal doesn't go unanswered. Every time I thought about how they had smiled, pretending to be sympathetic as they pushed me out, my determination grew. I didn't want revenge for the sake of anger. I wanted it for the sake of justice. I also began making small adjustments. In my personal life, I reached out to supportive friends like Marcus Ellison, people who reminded me of my worth and gave me perspective. I spent more time on hobbies and small projects that made me feel in control again. Slowly, I felt the anger transform into focus. By the end of the week, I had a clear picture of what I would do. Eric and Tanya believed they were in control. They believed that taking my system meant they could erase me. But I knew their confidence would be their downfall. I had patience on my side, and I had every detail of my creation in my mind. When the time was right, I would let them realize their mistake. In the weeks after I was fired, I didn't disappear the way Derek probably expected. I stayed quiet, but I stayed aware. I still had friends inside the company, not spies. Just normal coworkers who trusted me and were confused about why I was suddenly gone. Through casual conversations, I slowly learned how things were going without me. At first, Derek acted confident. He told the team that everything was under control. Tanya suddenly stepped into a leadership role over the system. She held meetings using words she barely understood, trying to sound technical. From what I heard, she repeated phrases I used to say, almost like she memorized my language without understanding it. But cracks started showing. Small errors began popping up in reports. Delivery schedules were slightly off. Nothing dramatic yet, but enough to cause tension. I knew why. My system wasn't simple. It had layers. There were hidden dependencies and manual checkpoints only I fully understood. I had built it carefully over years, adjusting it based on real problems that came up. They had the structure. They didn't have the understanding. Marcus, who still worked there in operations, told me something interesting one evening over coffee. Derek had asked him if there were backup instructions for certain processes. That made me smile inside. Derek always believed leadership meant ownership. Now he was realizing ownership without knowledge meant nothing. I didn't interfere. I didn't warn them. I just listened. Through those updates, I began to see their pattern. Instead of admitting they needed help, Derek doubled down. He blamed minor staff for errors. Tanya insisted the system just needed minor tweaks. They were trying to force control over something they didn't truly grasp. What they didn't realize was this. The system was stable because I maintained it constantly. I knew where to check. I knew which areas needed small manual corrections before they turned into bigger issues. Without that quiet maintenance, pressure would slowly build. I also reviewed everything in my head. Every shortcut, every timed process, every safeguard. I remembered where flexibility existed and where rigidity could cause problems if mishandled. I had never built the system to fail, but I had built it with complexity they underestimated. You're watching. From the outside was strange. Part of me felt hurt. That place had been my second home. But another part of me felt clarity. I finally saw Derek and Tanya without the filter of loyalty. They weren't strategic, they were opportunistic. And opportunistic people rarely plan for consequences. The more I observed, the more confident I became. They were rushing. They wanted quick credit. They wanted to present the system as their success to upper management. But speed and ego are dangerous when handling something delicate. I didn't need to sabotage anything. All I had to do was let them believe they were in control. As I watched everything unfold from a distance, I knew the next step wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about precision. If Derek and Tanya were going to take full ownership of the system, then I needed to make sure they truly owned it, including its weaknesses. Before I left the company, I had followed every rule. I didn't delete files. I didn't damage anything. But I also didn't go out of my way to simplify parts of the system that only I maintained manually. There were processes that required regular calibration, small timing adjustments, minor data cleanups, invisible things that kept everything running smoothly. They never asked how often I maintained it. They assumed it ran perfectly on its own. That assumption was their biggest mistake. Over the years, I had built automated triggers that relied on correct human oversight. If someone rushed updates or modified one part without understanding its connection to another, it would create a chain reaction. It's not instantly, slowly, like pressure building behind a wall. So I made a decision. I would not sabotage anything. I would simply stop protecting them from their own ignorance. I reviewed the documentation I had submitted before leaving. It was accurate, clean, professional, but it didn't include the instinct that comes from years of experience. It didn't include the mental notes I carried in my head, the watch this carefully or never adjust this without checking that first. That knowledge left with me. Meanwhile, Derek pushed Tanya to expand the system's capabilities. From what Marcus told me, they wanted to present new improvements to senior leadership within a month. Improvements on something they barely understood. That was the moment I realized I didn't need to build revenge. Their ambition was building. It for me, I calmly declined a message Derek sent a week later, asking if I'd be willing to consult briefly. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they did, just a casual request for help. Responded professionally and said I was focusing on other opportunities. I could almost imagine his frustration reading that. Inside, I felt something shift. Anger, not bitterness. Control. For the first time since being fired, I wasn't replaying the betrayal in my head. I was watching a plan unfold naturally. They believed removing me made them stronger. But in reality, it removed the one person quietly preventing small cracks from becoming fractures. I didn't need to push anything. All I had to do was wait. Because systems built with depth demand respect, and they had none. While everything at the office slowly moved toward the consequences I expected, I made a decision about myself. I refused to let my entire identity stay tied to that company. For years, my routine had been simple: wake up, work late, solve problems, repeat. Now, for the first time in 6 years, I had space. At first, that space felt uncomfortable. Silence in the mornings reminded me that I wasn't needed there anymore. But instead of letting that thought break me, I used it. I started updating my resume properly, not in a rushed way, but with pride. I listed every achievement, every efficiency improvement, every system upgrade I had built. Seeing it written out reminded me of something important. Derek didn't create my skills. That company didn't create my intelligence. I did. I also reconnected with parts of myself I had ignored. I began running again in the evenings, something I hadn't done in years. The physical movement cleared my head and replaced anger with focus. I met Marcus for dinner more often, not to talk about office drama, but to laugh about normal life. Slowly, the bitterness lost its edge. I even started working on a small personal software project at home. Nothing dramatic, it's just something that belonged to me. No corporate pressure, no hidden agendas, just creativity. That project reminded me why I started working in tech in the first place. I loved building things, solving problems, creating order from chaos. And the more I rebuilt myself, the more I realized something powerful. They didn't just underestimate my system. They underestimated me. Instead of feeling like a victim of betrayal, I started feeling like someone who had been set free. Derek had always limited promotions. Tanya had always competed quietly. That environment had been shrinking me without me realizing it. Now, I had clarity. Meanwhile, updates from inside the office became more tense. Minor client complaints increased. Small processing delays were happening more often. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to cause pressure in meetings. Derek was reportedly stressed, Tanya defensive. But I didn't celebrate it. I focused on becoming stronger, because revenge feels hollow if you're still broken inside. The end of that month, I wasn't just waiting for their collapse. I was preparing for my next chapter. And when the crash came in, I knew it would die, wouldn't just be watching. I would be ready. As the weeks passed, I noticed something interesting. The tension inside the company was no longer subtle. It was growing. Marcus told me meetings had become longer and more intense. Derek was asking more questions. Tanya was defending more decisions. The confidence they once showed after firing me was starting to fade. That's when I decided to test something. Not sabotage, not interference, just pressure. A former client I had worked closely with reached out to me directly. He had my personal email from years of collaboration. He mentioned small inconsistencies in recent reports and asked if I was still overseeing the system. I kept my response simple and honest. I told him I was no longer with the company and wished him the best. I knew that message alone would create ripples. Clients trust consistency. When they sense instability, they ask questions. And questions travel upward quickly in corporate offices. A few days later, Marcus mentioned that Derek looked exhausted. Apparently, upper management had started reviewing performance metrics more closely. Delays were being examined. More rates were discussed openly. For the first time, Derek didn't have me to quietly fix things before they were noticed. Then something else happened. Derek emailed me again. This time, the tone was different, less confident, more direct. He asked if I would consider a short-term Contract to assist during the transition period. No apology. Still no acknowledgement of what they had done. Just need I stared at the email for a long time. Months ago, I would have felt anger reading it. Now I felt something else. Validation. They were beginning to realize that documentation wasn't the same as mastery. That copying structure wasn't the same as understanding it. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch. Silence can be powerful. It forces people to sit with their own decisions. Meanwhile, Tanya reportedly began shifting blame toward legacy complexity. That phrase made me laugh quietly. System wasn't too complex, it was just too advanced for someone who never built it. Small issues were now compounding. Timing mismatches, reporting errors stacking up. Departments depending on automated flows were beginning to notice inconsistencies. Nothing explosive yet, but the pressure was building faster. And here's the truth. I didn't need to crash anything. All I had to do was stop protecting them from consequences. For the first time since they fired me, I felt completely calm. The betrayal that once hurt now felt like a lesson. I had trusted the wrong leadership, but I had never doubted my own ability. Now they were the ones questioning theirs. The collapse didn't happen all at once, built slowly, like a storm gathering in the distance. Small issues that Derek and Tanya ignored began stacking on top of each other. A delayed shipment here, a mismatched inventory count there, minor. Reporting gaps that seemed harmless at first, but systems don't fail because of one big mistake. They fail because small problems are ignored for too long. Then it happened. At the start of a new quarter, Derek pushed for a system-wide update. He wanted to prove leadership. He wanted to show upper management that the department was evolving without me. Tanya approved the changes quickly. From what Marcus told me, they barely tested the adjustments before launching them live. That update touched multiple automated workflows at once, and that's when the pressure cracked the wall. Data began duplicating across departments, shipping schedules overlapped incorrectly, inventory numbers spiked and dropped within hours, automated notifications triggered at the wrong times. The support team was flooded with calls. Managers couldn't generate accurate reports. The system didn't explode, it unraveled. Because the safeguards I used to manually monitor every week were never maintained. The calibration checkpoints were skipped. The invisible balancing work I used to do quietly was gone. By mid-afternoon, the office was in chaos. Marcus said Derek was pacing between offices, demanding answers. Tanya was glued to her screen, trying to reverse changes she barely understood. Its support was overwhelmed. Upper management had stepped in directly. The first time, they couldn't hide behind confidence. They couldn't blame minor staff. The flaws were too big. The worst part for them, system logs clearly showed when the instability began after their update. No one could connect it to me. I had been gone for months. Everything was documented. Everything was clean. This wasn't sabotage. This was consequence. Late that evening, my phone buzzed again. Another email from Derek. This one didn't ask. It pleaded. He said the company was experiencing critical instability and asked if I could urgently consult to prevent financial damage. I read the message twice. 6 months ago, I was disposable. Now I was critical. I felt no joy in their panic, just clarity. They had removed the architect and assumed the building would hold itself together. But systems require stewardship. Leadership requires humility, and they had neither. I closed the email without replying immediately. For the first time since they fired me, the balance had fully shifted. They thought firing me gave them power. Instead, it revealed how much they depended on the very person they betrayed. By the next morning, the situation inside the company had worsened. What started as confusion had turned into full damage control. Emergency meetings were scheduled. Back to back. Department heads were demanding explanations. Clients were calling for updates. And Derek, the same man who once calmly told me I was no longer necessary, was now under direct scrutiny. Marcus called me that evening. His voice was low but steady. He said upper management had brought in external consultants to assess the breakdown. They were reviewing logs, update histories, and system architecture. The conclusion was becoming obvious. The failure wasn't random. It was caused by poor oversight and reckless modifications. Tanya reportedly tried to explain the update as a strategic optimization. But when asked to walk through the technical logic behind it, she couldn't. The consultants asked detailed questions. Questions she didn't know how to answer. Her confidence, the same confidence she wore the day I was fired, was cracking. Derek attempted to shift responsibility onto inherited structural risks. That phrase almost made me laugh. Inherited. As if he hadn't proudly taken ownership of the entire system months earlier. But the records didn't lie. The update approval had his name attached. The authorization trail was clear. The fallout wasn't dramatic shouting or public humiliation. It was something quieter. Loss of credibility. Senior leadership began excluding Derek from certain strategic meetings. Temporary oversight was placed on his department. The consultants recommended rolling back changes and rebuilding portions of the system carefully. Carefully, the word Derek never valued. Then came the moment that truly shifted everything. Of the consultants apparently asked, who originally designed this architecture? And for the first time since I left, my name was spoken in a room where I wasn't present. Marcus said the room went silent for a second, so everyone knew they'd removed the one person who understood the system completely. That evening, I finally responded to Derek's email. My message was calm and professional.
I said I was
open to discussing a short-term consulting agreement with formal terms. Full transparency and independent authority over technical decisions. No desperation, no anger, just boundaries. The next morning he replied within minutes, agreeing the same company that dismissed me without hesitation was now negotiating on my terms. I didn't feel revenge in that moment. I felt restoration. They tried to erase my value. Instead, they proved it. By the time the consulting agreement was in place, I had full clarity about what had happened and why it mattered. Derek and Tanya had thought firing me was the end of my influence. They thought they could take my system, claim credit, and erase me from the narrative. But the opposite had happened. Every decision I had made after being fired had been deliberate. I stayed calm, observed, and allowed their ignorance and greed to expose itself. I didn't need to yell, confront, or sabotage, as the chaos they faced was entirely a consequence of their own arrogance. Watching it unfold quietly gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. I also reflected on the lessons I had learned. Patience is a powerful tool. Knowledge is more valuable than authority when misused. And most importantly, true power comes from maintaining integrity while others underestimate you. Derek and Tanya's panic didn't stem from me actively trying to hurt them, came from the vacuum they had created by pushing out someone who actually knew what they were doing. It was strange, but liberating, to realize that revenge doesn't have to be dramatic or vindictive to be complete. Sometimes, the most satisfying form of payback is watching someone face the results of their own poor decisions while you remain composed and unaffected. Over time, I rebuilt my life professionally as well. I began consulting independently, taking projects that valued my expertise. I had more freedom than I ever did in the office. Derek and Tanya were left to manage what they couldn't fully control. My departure and their mistakes had reshaped the office hierarchy and showed everyone the cost of undervaluing the right person. I felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that doesn't need recognition or applause. They had tried to erase me. They had failed spectacularly. I had emerged stronger, smarter, and more in control of my life than ever before. In the end, this story wasn't just about an office system or a failed betrayal. It was about resilience, strategy, and knowing your worth. Derek and Tanya exposed themselves. I reclaimed my value. And the result was far sweeter than any instant revenge could have been. After all that had happened, I finally allowed myself to step back and reflect. The chaos in the office had settled. Derek and Tanya were no longer the confident figures they once seemed. Their mistakes and arrogance had left a mark, not just on the system, but on their credibility. For me, the journey had been about more than revenge. It had been about understanding my own worth and strength. I realized that betrayal while painful, can also be a powerful teacher. It showed me who truly valued my work, who underestimated me, and how patience and strategy can turn a bad situation into a triumph. I had grown during those months. I rebuilt my personal life, strengthened relationships with supportive friends, like Marcus, and pursued opportunities that valued my skills and integrity. I wasn't just the architect of a system, I was someone who could navigate betrayal, outsmart opportunism, and remain calm while others scrambled in panic. The office chaos had been a test. Derek and Tanya had chosen short-term greed over understanding, ambition over competence. They thought they were smart. They thought removing me would erase my influence. But it only highlighted their weaknesses. They learned too late that removing a key person doesn't make you stronger. It exposes your own limitations. As for me, I moved forward without bitterness. I didn't gloat, and I didn't rub their failures in their faces. Instead, I took pride in the quiet strength I had shown. I let their collapse speak for itself. My patience, strategy, and professionalism had created a situation where justice was served without me having to act impulsively. Looking back, I realized this experience had given me something far more valuable than revenge. It gave me clarity, confidence, and freedom. I had been betrayed, yes, but I had emerged stronger, smarter, and fully in control of my life. Knowledge and the calm satisfaction of having turned betrayal into empowerment was worth far more than any momentary victory could ever be. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is not in what you do to someone, but in how you rise above them. And in this case, rising above meant being the one who remained composed, competent, and completely unshaken, while others fell into chaos because of their own mistakes. The story ended with closure, not anger, not bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that patience, skill, and intelligence always outlast arrogance and greed.